It started with a text from my mom that should have felt warm, inviting, and familiar. But instead, it came with a subtle sting I couldn't quite place at first. Christmas Eve dinner starts at 5 sharp this year, Quinn. Bring the kids. Love, Mom. That was it. No emojis. No excitement. No follow-up message with those winking little notes she used to send. You better be bringing those chocolate truffles I love. Or, don't forget to wear that awful sweater. It's tradition. Just sterile. Like I was getting an appointment reminder, not a family invitation. I should back up a little. I'm Quinn, 36 years old. And if you had told me 5 years ago that I'd be the black sheep of the family, I would have laughed in your face. I used to be the reliable one. The calm older brother. The guy who bailed everyone out when they needed it. Whether it was money, babysitting, car trouble, you name it. But ever since the divorce, it's like the family quietly shifted around me and closed ranks. And suddenly I was on the outside of a circle I didn't even realize I was no longer standing in. My ex-wife, Kayla, left when our youngest, Aria, was barely 2. I won't pretend I was perfect, but I never expected her to ghost the kids too. She moved across the country, got remarried, and all but disappeared. Since then, it's just been me, juggling full-time work and full-time parenting. My son, Caleb, is 9, smart, quiet, the kind of kid who notices things before anyone else does. Ari is now 5, a firecracker in sparkly leggings who thinks glitter is a primary food group. They're my whole world. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every parent-teacher conference. I've been there. Alone, but there. And yet, for some reason, my family treats us like we're temporary guests in a house we helped build. My younger brother, Mason, is the golden boy. He's 32, married to a woman named Kelsey who somehow always looks like she just walked off a Pinterest board. They've got twins, Lily and Logan, 4 years old, photogenic, dressed in matching outfits even when they're just going to the grocery store. And my mom, she's obsessed with them. Every group chat, every holiday card, every magnet on her fridge is Lily and Logan smiling at pumpkin patches or holding tiny American flags. You'd think they were royalty. Caleb and Aria? A footnote, if that. Still, I tried. I always try. Every year I go to Christmas Eve dinner with a fake smile and a bottle of wine no one touches. I bring homemade gifts. I offer to help in the kitchen. I make sure my kids say thank you even when they get socks 3 sizes too small. I keep peace, even when I feel like I'm bleeding inside. But this year something was different. When we arrived at my mom's house, the same house I grew up in, though she'd recently redone the kitchen with granite countertops and that open shelving thing she saw on HGTV, I noticed the shift immediately. The driveway was packed. There were lights strung up with more care than I'd ever seen before. Holiday music played from outdoor speakers. The porch had little baskets of hot cocoa packets and candy canes. It looked like a Christmas movie. But when I stepped inside with Caleb holding one hand and Aria the other, the warm glow didn't quite reach us. "Oh, you made it," my mom said, more surprised than pleased. She didn't bend down to hug the kids. No cheerful, "Look how big you're getting." Just a brisk nod and a glance over my shoulder like she was waiting for someone else. I glanced around. The living room was packed. Mason's family, a few cousins, some family friends. Everyone was already in full celebration mode. Kids running, gifts stacked under the tree like a mini shopping mall display. But something was missing. Actually, several things. There were stockings hung on the mantel. Lily, Logan, Mason, Kelsey, even Grandma and Papa Jim, my mom's partner. But no Caleb. No Aria. No Quinn. My chest tightened. I said nothing. "Daddy, where's our stocking?" Aria asked, tugging my sleeve. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "Maybe it's in a different room." Spoiler, it wasn't. We moved through the evening like ghosts. When dinner was served, there weren't enough chairs. We were told to just grab spots wherever. My kids ended up eating on the floor by the coffee table. No one made room. No one offered to swap. I crouched beside them, pretending it was a fun picnic. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. That maybe the stockings had just been forgotten. That maybe the dinner chaos was just poor planning, not personal. That maybe, just maybe, I was being too sensitive. But then came the gift exchange. It's always been a tradition in our family. After dinner, everyone gathers in the living room, and we do a kind of informal unwrapping. Kids go first, then adults. My mom is the ringleader. handing out gifts with exaggerated flair. This one's for Lily, ooh la la. Or, oh, Logan's gonna love this. I watched as the tree was slowly picked clean, gift by gift, my mom's voice ringing out each name like a bell. Mason, Kelsey, Lily, Logan, even Papa Jim got a new fishing vest. But not once did she say Caleb, or Arya, or Quinn. I waited, frozen, as the last gift was handed out. Wrapping paper littered the floor like confetti. Caleb had gone quiet beside me, staring down at his hands. Arya's lip trembled. I swallowed a rock in my throat. Finally, I stood and walked over to my mom, who was sipping her wine and chatting with Kelsey. Hey, I said softly, not wanting to make a scene. Just wondering, were Caleb and Arya's gifts maybe left somewhere else? Upstairs, maybe? I didn't see anything for them. My mom looked at me like I'd asked for her social security number. Oh, she said. We didn't really do gifts for your side this year. My brain stuttered. What do you mean? She gave a little smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Well, money's tight. And Mason's kids are still so young, you know? We figured they'd appreciate it more. I blinked. So you got gifts for everyone else, and just skipped my kids? They're used to not having as much, she said, like she was explaining the weather. And we didn't want to waste money on your side this year. I felt heat rising in my face. Mason, sitting nearby, chimed in without looking up from his phone. Be grateful we even invited you, man. That's when something inside me cracked. Not anger, not even sadness, just clarity. I scanned the room, my jaw clenched, and noticed something. A shiny red gift box near the back of the tree, still unopened. The tag had fallen off, but something about it caught my eye. The wrapping paper was familiar. I walked over, picked it up, turned it in my hands, and froze. There, stuck to the bottom with a bit of ripped tape, was a receipt. Folded, crumpled. I opened it, and there it was. My credit card number, my name, the date. The gift had been bought using my account. My money. I held it up and turned to the room, my voice calm but loud enough to cut through the holiday cheer. Interesting, I said. This one has my name on the receipt. The room went silent. For a moment, it was like the entire room had stopped breathing. The kind of silence that feels physical, heavy, stretching, and so absolute that even the sound of Arya's juice box crinkling cut through it. I stood there with the unopened gift box still in my hands, the receipt fluttering between my fingers like a flag planted on enemy soil. My name printed at the bottom of that receipt might as well have been a spotlight. Nobody moved. Nobody blinked. Finally, Mason broke the silence with a scoff, all smug detachment and condescension. You probably just forgot you bought that, he said, not even looking up from his phone. You're not exactly organized these days. I stared at him. It's dated last week. I haven't bought a single gift from this store in over a year. And this, I held it up higher, turning slowly so everyone could see, was wrapped in the exact same paper all your kids' gifts were in. Kelsey was suddenly very busy adjusting Logan's sweater. My mom sat there, still swirling her wine like she was watching a cooking show instead of the slow implosion of her living room. I looked over at Caleb and Arya. They were still sitting quietly on the floor by the coffee table, surrounded by torn wrapping paper that hadn't belonged to them. Caleb's eyes were narrowed. Arya was hugging her stuffed unicorn like a shield. Neither said a word, but their silence screamed in my ears. Did you use my card to buy Christmas gifts? I asked, not loud, not angry, just steady, measured. My mom's eyes finally met mine. Her smile dropped, but only for a second. Then it reappeared, tight and polite. We meant to tell you. It was just for a few things. We thought you wouldn't mind. I blinked slowly. You used my money to buy gifts for everyone but my kids. She shrugged. It's all family. What's the difference? The words landed like a slap. Not even a justification, not an apology, just that same dismissive tone she always used when she didn't want to admit she was wrong. I felt it rise again, that bitter clarity. It stripped away years of denial, every excuse I'd made for her behavior, every time I'd told myself to suck it up, to be grateful, to not make waves. Did you ask me? I said, even once. My mom sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. Quinn, stop making a scene. It's Christmas. No one said anything. Not a single voice in that room stood up for me. Not one person looked surprised. And that told me everything I needed to know. The gift in my hand suddenly felt radioactive. I placed it gently on the floor and walked over to my kids. Caleb's eyes flicked up at me, searching my face. Arya leaned against my leg. We're leaving, I said quietly. That's when Mason stood up. Come on, man. Don't be dramatic, he said. The kids are having fun. Don't ruin it for everyone. I turned to him, and something in my expression must have made him pause. They're not having fun, Mason. They've been ignored all night. They didn't get a single gift. They ate dinner on the floor. And now I find out that the one gift that might have been for them was bought with my card, without my permission, and handed to one of your kids like it was nothing. He threw up his hands. Okay, so maybe Mom messed up. But she raised you, didn't she? You owe her a little grace. A sharp, humorless laugh escaped me. Grace, I echoed. Is that what this is? She's done so much for us, he insisted. For you, I corrected. He didn't argue. I knelt beside Arya, gently helping her back into her coat. Come on, honey. Caleb, you too. But as I zipped up Arya's jacket, I heard my mom's voice from behind me, sharp, cold, cutting in a way that only she could be. You always were so sensitive, Quinn. Just like your father. I stood up slowly, turning to face her. Don't. She tilted her head. It's true. He couldn't handle criticism either. That's why he left. My vision tunneled for a second. The mention of my father, who walked out when I was 10 and left me to pick up the slack, was a line I hadn't expected her to cross. But she did, with that same smile on her face. The same one she used when I cried after school, and she told me boys don't get to fall apart. I took a breath, steadying myself. We're done here. No, she said suddenly, standing. We are not done. You don't get to throw a tantrum in my house and walk out like a martyr. I've supported you more than anyone, and this is the thanks I get. Supported me? I repeated, stunned. Who let you stay here after Kayla left? Who helped you get back on your feet? You gave me a guest room for 2 months, I said, voice calm but shaking. Then charged me rent higher than market rate. You told me not to get too comfortable. You refused to babysit unless I paid you. You made it clear you were doing me a favor, and you never let me forget it. She crossed her arms. I have a right to set boundaries. Then so do I said, my voice low. Mason stepped in again, clearly trying to reclaim the room. Seriously, Quinn, this is getting sad. Nobody's out to get you. You're acting like a victim because you didn't get your name on a few presents. Grow up. That was it. The moment. The breaking point. I looked at him, really looked at him. The smug tilt of his chin, the lazy arrogance of someone who'd always had things handed to him, who never had to pick up the pieces of anything, who didn't know what it meant to go without. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife, Logan, his son, walked over, holding one of the shiny new gifts under his arm. The same one I'd found. The one with my name on the receipt. Uncle Quinn, he said cheerfully. Thank you for the race car. I looked down at the box in his hands. It was one of the expensive ones. The kind Caleb had begged me for last month, but I couldn't afford it because I was catching up on rent after a rough patch at work. The same gift I had said no to, and now here it was, bought with my money, in another kid's hands, while my own sat empty-handed. Something inside me shattered. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't curse or storm out or make a speech. I just knelt beside Logan, gave him a small nod, and said, "You're welcome, buddy." Then I turned back to Mason. You know what's sad? I said, it's not that you think I'm playing the victim. It's that you genuinely believe you're the hero in this story. He frowned, confused. What are you talking about? You'll find out, I said simply. And then I walked out, my kids bundled up, silent and wide-eyed as we stepped into the night. The cold air hit me like a slap, but it felt cleaner than anything in that house. I helped Arya into her booster, buckled Caleb in, and slid into the driver's seat with a kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. The kind that comes before a storm. Because that night wasn't just the end of a Christmas gathering. It was the end of an illusion. And what none of them knew, not my mother, not Mason, not even Papa Jim sipping brandy in the corner, was that I had already been planning something. Not out of spite, not even for revenge, just to protect what mattered. My kids, my dignity, my future. But after that night, it stopped being protection, and it became something else entirely. Something bigger, something none of them were prepared for. And it all started with one little detail Mason forgot. He'd used my card, my business account, and that made everything traceable. We drove home in silence that night. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because I needed to keep it together for my kids. Arya fell asleep halfway home, her unicorn clutched to her chest like a lifeline, and Caleb kept staring out the window, blinking hard. I knew he wasn't crying, not exactly, but something had fractured in him. Something I couldn't patch over with a bedtime story or a kiss on the forehead. When we pulled into our small townhouse driveway, I turned off the engine and just sat there, staring at the dark windows of our home. No lights, no decorations, no tree in the window. I told myself we'd decorate together on Christmas Day this year, but the truth was, I hadn't had the energy or the budget. Between the rising rent, groceries, and fixing the old Honda, there hadn't been anything left for lights or ornaments. I carried Arya in and tucked her in bed without waking her. Caleb followed behind me quietly, didn't even ask for a snack like he normally would. When I pulled his blanket up, he looked at me and finally said, "Did we do something wrong?" I sat on the edge of his bed and held back the lump in my throat. "No, buddy, you didn't do anything wrong. Some people just forget what really matters. But that's not your fault." He didn't answer. He just rolled onto his side and whispered, "Thanks for trying." That one cracked me open. After they were asleep, I sat in the living room in the dark. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt empty, like the air had been sucked out of the room and I didn't have the strength to refill it. I looked around at the half-decorated house, a single red stocking I'd put up for show, a cheap plastic wreath from last year still hanging lopsided on the front door, and a $4 roll of wrapping paper I hadn't used. I felt like a failure. As a father, as a son, as a brother, like every part of me was stretched too thin and worn out. And that's when the next blow landed. I checked my email, more out of habit than anything, and saw it. A flag message from my bank. Unusual account activity. At first, I thought it might have been a fraud alert. Maybe Mason had used my card again. But when I clicked it open, my heart sank. A business charge had triggered a freeze. The Christmas gifts. Multiple purchases, all logged under client entertainment and vendor gifting. Normally, this wouldn't be an issue. I ran a small freelance graphic design business. Nothing huge, but enough to pay the bills. And I had a separate business account for tax reasons. But the problem was this. Mason hadn't just used my card. He'd used my business credit card. And because I hadn't noticed it until now, those charges had automatically been flagged for audit by the bookkeeping service I subscribed to. This was bad. Really bad. I spent the next 2 hours combing through transactions, cross-referencing dates, calling the card company, trying to dispute the purchases. But since the gifts were delivered and the store had a signed receipt, I had no recourse. The charges would stay. Over $1,300. All of it tied to items I didn't authorize and couldn't return. Worse, the accounting service suspended my automatic tax prep. They marked my profile as pending review for fraudulent vendor activity. I couldn't invoice clients until it was resolved. That meant no cash flow. No money coming in. Not for Christmas. Not for January rent. Rock bottom. That week between Christmas and New Year's was the darkest I'd had in years. My fridge was nearly empty, and I was rationing cereal for the kids' breakfast. I had to text 3 clients and apologize for delays. I even pawned my old iPad just to make sure we had gas money. I didn't tell anyone, not friends, not colleagues, and definitely not my mom. I knew what she'd say. Something like, "You should have budgeted better," or worse, "Maybe if you didn't spend so much time feeling sorry for yourself, you'd be successful like your brother." So I kept quiet. I swallowed my pride, sat with the shame, and did what I'd always done, survived. But somewhere in that darkness, something shifted. It wasn't a sudden epiphany or a magical moment of clarity. It was slow, creeping, almost invisible at first. A whisper that grew louder each day. "No one is coming to save you, Quinn. So save yourself." On New Year's Eve, while most people were popping champagne or setting resolutions, I was sitting on the living room floor with a notebook and a dull pencil, writing down everything I had left. A list. What I have. Laptop, barely working. Wi-Fi for now. Adobe Creative Cloud, paid through February. 2 steady clients, small contracts, but loyal. LinkedIn connections, about 200. 1 good suit. My kids. I circled that last one. That was my reason. Not revenge. Not pride. Just Caleb and Arya. I got to work. Every night after they went to sleep, I stayed up researching how to scale freelance work. I watched YouTube videos about client outreach, wrote cold emails to small businesses, updated my website. I rebranded entirely. New logo, new pitch, new rate sheet. I even offered a few designs for free to local shops in exchange for referrals. Slowly, things picked up. A bakery downtown needed help with Instagram visuals. A startup in Chicago found my Behance page and asked for pitch deck designs. One project led to another. I didn't sleep much, and I definitely didn't have time to wallow. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was building something. By February, I had 4 regular clients and had landed a $5,000 rebranding contract with a mid-sized pet food company. It was the biggest deal I'd ever negotiated, and I closed it over a video call with Aria braiding my hair under the desk. We started eating better. I replaced the broken microwave. I bought a cheap used tree and promised the kids we'd decorate it next year, even if it was July. I enrolled Caleb in a weekend robotics program he'd been dreaming about. Aria got to pick out her own sparkly backpack for kindergarten. I still hadn't spoken to my mom or Mason. Not a word. They hadn't reached out, and I didn't expect them to. I figured they assumed I was licking my wounds somewhere, still bitter, still broke. And honestly, I was fine with that. Let them. What they didn't know was that I was laying bricks. Quietly, carefully, because while I rebuilt my business and my sense of self, I also started documenting everything. I downloaded every statement, every receipt, every timestamp from the card charges. I took screenshots of text threads. I requested security footage from the store that matched the date and time Mason made the purchases using my business card and confirmed it with the cashier's ID from the log. I compiled it all in a folder labeled for later. Because I didn't want an apology anymore. I wanted accountability. But not for me. For Caleb. For Aria. For every time they were made to feel small in a room full of people who should have lifted them up. One evening, Caleb asked if we could go visit Nana. I hesitated. Why do you want to go there? He shrugged. Just to show her the new robot I built. I want her to see I'm not nothing. That nearly broke me again. But instead, I smiled and said, we'll see. Because what I was planning next wasn't about proving worth to anyone. It was about reclaiming what was stolen and making sure it never happened again. What came next wasn't just a confrontation. It was a reckoning. And it started with a single email. To Mason. With the subject line, thought you might want to see this before I press send. The email sat in my drafts for 3 days before I finally hit send. I wanted every word to land like a scalpel, not with rage or theatrics, but with surgical precision. No accusations, no threats, just the facts. Cold, traceable, undeniable. I included 3 attachments. A PDF titled Unauthorized Transactions, Business Account, listing each charge made using my company credit card during the week of Christmas. A screenshot from the store's security footage showing Mason at the register, holding the exact gift Logan thanked me for. The store receipt, with my business name and billing info at the bottom. At the end, I wrote only this. You have 48 hours to make this right. Quietly, professionally, and fully, or I escalate. And you know I will. Then I sent it. Not to stir panic. Not to bluff. But because I had reached a point where I wasn't afraid anymore. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, another one. Then a text. You're seriously doing this? Call me. Now. Mason. I didn't call. I waited. Let him sweat. That evening, another message came through, this time from Kelsey, the first contact I'd had from her since the Christmas debacle. Quinn. Please. This is a misunderstanding. Mason didn't mean to use your business card. He thought it was the one you guys used to share for family stuff. That was a lie. There was no shared card. There never had been. But the message told me one very important thing. They were worried. And they should have been. Because while I had quietly rebuilt my life, they'd been coasting on assumptions. They assumed I'd always take the high road. That I'd always be too tired or too broke or too Quinn to push back. That the guilt they weaponized for years would keep me docile. But guilt is only powerful if you still want their approval. I was done wanting anything from them. So I sent one final message. There's nothing to discuss. All communications from here on will go through my lawyer. I didn't have a lawyer yet, but they didn't know that. I spent the next 2 days researching business law, misappropriation of funds, small claims court procedures, and, most importantly, how to file a formal complaint with the IRS if someone uses your business account for personal gain. Mason hadn't just stolen from me. He'd left a paper trail that could trigger a tax audit I'd be forced to endure. But if I timed this right, I could turn that into leverage. I started with a consultation, free, thankfully, with a solo practitioner named Alicia Grant. She was sharp, no nonsense, and listened without a hint of pity. When I finished explaining, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You have two options. 1. File charges. Small claims court, theft, potential civil penalties. That'll take time, money, and energy. You'll win, eventually, but it'll get messy." I nodded. "And the second?" She smiled. "Use the evidence to make him clean it up on your terms. Quietly. Make him sweat. Make him pay. You don't need the court. You need leverage. And you already have it." I liked Alicia, so we drafted a letter. Professional. Unambiguous. Not threatening, just informative. It explained that unauthorized charges on a registered business account could result in a formal IRS audit. That I was prepared to file, but preferred a resolution that didn't involve the agency. That all I required was full reimbursement, a signed statement admitting fault, and a public apology to my children, preferably in the form of a gift of equivalent value, with no strings attached. I mailed a physical copy to Mason's house. Certified. He signed for it 2 days later. That same night, my phone rang. It was Mom. I stared at her name on the screen for a long time. Then I picked up. "Quinn." Her voice was clipped. Tense. "Mason showed me what you're doing." "Good," I said flatly. "I don't know what you're trying to prove with all this, but this family doesn't air dirty laundry in public." I blinked, stunned by the irony. "You made my kids sit through Christmas with nothing but cold pizza and pity, and that wasn't dirty laundry?" "I raised you better than this. You raised me to be quiet," I said. "To make excuses for everyone but myself. To shrink. To sacrifice. To keep the peace no matter how much it hurt. You didn't raise me. You groomed me to be convenient." Silence. Then, quietly, "You're twisting things." I leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Maybe. Or maybe you just don't like that I finally stopped twisting myself." She didn't hang up, but she didn't apologize either. Just sighed and said, "Do what you have to do." I hung up. 2 days later, a check arrived in the mail. Made out to my business name. $1,382. The exact amount of the charges Mason racked up. There was a sticky note attached, in Kelsey's handwriting. "Can we please put this behind us? The kids miss their uncle." The hypocrisy would have been laughable if it weren't so predictable. I deposited the check. But I didn't reply. That wasn't the end. Not yet. Because while the money covered the financial damage, it didn't address the emotional scar that night had left on my children. On me. And more importantly, I had another card to play. One I'd been waiting on for weeks. See, after Christmas, I'd reached out to a family friend, Mr. Sampson, who happened to be the principal at a private elementary school across town. It wasn't a flashy prep academy, just a modest but excellent K-8 school with smaller class sizes, supportive teachers, and a well-known STEM program. Caleb's dream school. Back in January, I couldn't afford it. But by March, with the pet food company contract extended and 2 new clients added to my roster, I had the deposit ready. Mr. Sampson remembered me. He remembered Dad, too, back when he used to volunteer at the school for events before he disappeared. He walked me through the financial aid process, helped expedite Caleb's application, and even got Arya a spot in the kindergarten class waitlist. And on the first Monday of April, Caleb walked into his new school with a backpack full of confidence and a heart that no longer questioned its worth. That night, he showed me his robotics workbook and said, "I'm going to build a claw that picks up soda cans. We can sell it and be rich." I laughed. "I like the way you think." Then he looked at me and added, "Nana didn't say anything to you, right? About that night? She didn't tell you sorry?" "No, buddy. She didn't." He nodded. "Okay. Then she doesn't get to meet my robot." I smiled. He was right. But I still wasn't finished. I wasn't interested in revenge for the sake of pride. I didn't want to ruin anyone. What I wanted was simple, to set the record straight, to cut off the pattern at its root. And I saw my opportunity in May, when I got an unexpected email from my cousin Rachel. "Hey Quinn, I know things have been weird, but I'm organizing Nana's 70th birthday. Big dinner. Surprise party. Everyone's coming. Even Kayla's parents. Can you bring Caleb and Arya?" It'd mean a lot. I stared at the message for a long time. Because of course now they wanted to see the kids. Of course now they wanted the whole family together, not out of love, but for image. For show. My mother's reputation mattered more to her than oxygen. So I said yes. But not for the reasons they thought. Because this wasn't going to be another night of silence and swallowed dignity. This was going to be the moment I took back the narrative. Piece by piece. And I had a plan. One final setup. One truth bomb with a shiny bow. It started with a reservation at the restaurant Rachel had chosen, an upscale Italian place with a private room and a custom cake order. I called and confirmed the booking under my mom's name. Then I casually asked, "Can I bring a slide deck? Just a short family presentation. Photos, mostly. It's a surprise." The manager said yes. They had a projector and HDMI access. No problem. Perfect. I spent the next week compiling a short video montage. Childhood photos. Family events. Birthdays, holidays, vacations. Everyone smiling. Everyone pretending. And then, at the end, a clip. Just 15 seconds. The grainy footage from the store security camera. Mason at the register. My name on the receipt. A quote in white text across the screen. "We didn't want to waste money on your side this year. Mom." Fade to black. Title card. Some gifts don't come wrapped in paper. I didn't tell anyone. Not Alicia. Not Caleb. Not even Rachel. Because this wasn't their story. It was mine. And I was finally ready to tell it. But not with yelling. Not with threats. Just a quiet, undeniable truth. In a room full of people who couldn't look away. That was the setup. And the next time I walked into a family event, I wouldn't be holding a wine bottle and fake smile. I'd be holding the mic. The night of my mother's 70th birthday arrived with the same uneasy tension I remembered from every family gathering. That polished surface-level warmth that always cracked if you pressed too hard on it. The restaurant was beautiful, dimly lit with soft amber lights reflecting off wine glasses and silverware. A long table was set in the private room, decorated with gold napkins and white roses. Everyone was already there when I arrived with Caleb and Aria, cousins, aunts, uncles, my mother's partner, and of course, Mason and Kelsey with their twins dressed like catalog models. My mother sat at the head of the table wearing a glittering shawl, all smiles, basking in attention. When she saw us, she waved as though nothing had ever happened. Like Christmas Eve hadn't occurred. Like that night never happened. "Quinn," she said brightly. "You made it." I forced a polite smile. "We did." Caleb clutched his backpack. Inside was his small tablet, which I had taught him how to plug into an HDMI cable. Aria held my hand with her other arm wrapped around her unicorn. Neither child stepped forward for a hug. They lingered behind me. My mother noticed but pretended not to. Mason stood up, plastering on that brotherly grin he used whenever he wanted to pretend everything was fine. "About time, man. Grab a seat." I nodded without acknowledging him and took my place at the far end of the table, the kids on either side of me. The dinner began with the usual conversation, cousins sharing work gossip, aunts whispering about someone's divorce, uncles debating politics. My mother soaked up the celebration like a plant leaning toward sunlight. Every so often she sent glances down the table at me and the kids. Curious glances. Cautious ones. But she didn't ask anything. She didn't apologize. She didn't even attempt small talk. She assumed silence meant forgiveness. She assumed wrong. When the plates were cleared and the cake was brought out, the restaurant manager slipped into the room behind me and nodded subtly. The projector was set up. The HDMI cable was ready. It was time. My cousin Rachel clinked her glass. "Everyone, before we bring out the cake, Quinn prepared something special." My mother's eyebrows lifted in mild surprise. "Oh, you did?" "Yes," I said, standing slowly. "A little presentation. Something for the whole family." Everyone clapped politely. Mason smirked like he expected a montage of childhood photos with sappy music. Perfect. I walked to the front of the room and connected my laptop. The screen illuminated the wall, and conversations faded as the first image appeared. A picture of my mother holding me at age 2, smiling. Then a picture of Mason and me as kids in the backyard. Pictures of holidays long past, our father before he left, cousins who'd grown up and moved away. Everyone murmured fondly. My mother dabbed at her eyes. It was soft, nostalgic, comforting. Exactly what I wanted. Then the final slide faded in. A title card, Christmas Eve, 3 months ago. My mother's smile froze. Mason shifted in his chair. The footage began to play. The grainy clip of Mason at the register, laughing, swiping my business card. The receipt zoomed in clearly, my business name displayed at the bottom. My business card. On Christmas gifts. Then came the audio clips I'd added, my mother's voice saying, "We didn't want to waste money on your side this year." Mason's voice layered in. "Be grateful we even invited you." The room went dead silent. Someone gasped. An aunt whispered, "Oh my goodness." Another muttered, What is this? I let the video play in full. It wasn't long, only 30 seconds. Just long enough to shift the entire temperature of the room. When it ended, the screen faded to a final line. Family is not built on blood, it is built on dignity. I let that hang in the air. Then I turned around. My mother was pale, her lips pressed tight, eyes locked on me with a mixture of shock and anger. Mason was red, fists clenched, sitting forward like he couldn't decide whether to yell or hide. Kelsey looked like she wanted to disappear. I stepped aside so everyone could see me clearly. This, I said calmly, is what my children and I walked into on Christmas Eve. No gifts, no stockings, no chairs at the table, and the one present bought with my money, given to someone else's child. My mother opened her mouth, but I raised a hand slightly. Not aggressively, just firmly. Not yet, I said quietly. She froze. I continued. I didn't make this video to embarrass anyone. I made it because the truth matters. And because my kids deserve to know they weren't crazy, that the way they were treated wasn't normal, and that they deserved better. My voice didn't tremble. For the first time in years, it didn't shake or soften or shrink. Family does not get to decide some children matter less, I said. Not anymore. Finally, Mason snapped. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It was just Christmas. It wasn't personal. You're making us look horrible. You made yourselves look horrible, I said. I just pressed play. My mother found her voice thin, brittle, and sharp. Why would you do this on my birthday? Because birthdays, holidays, every celebration, they've always been about image. About pretending. And you always expected me to play along. Smile. Stay quiet. Make excuses. I paused. But your silence that night taught me something important. The only people I'm responsible for protecting are the two sitting at the far end of this table. Dozens of eyes turned toward Caleb and Arya. Caleb lifted his chin. Arya squeezed her unicorn. My mother's voice wavered. Quinn, you could have talked to me privately. I tried, I said. You dismissed me. Again, and again, and again. I gestured toward the screen. This wasn't about me. It was about them. And if this is the only way you hear it, so be it. One of my uncles cleared his throat. You spent your son's school tuition money on Christmas gifts that weren't even for his kids, he asked Mason. Mason turned redder. I didn't think it mattered whose card I grabbed. So you admit it? I asked. He glared at me. You're making this worse. You're tearing the family apart. No, I said softly. I'm finally holding it together. This time, the silence wasn't avoidance. It was agreement, realization, even shame. Several relatives who had never spoken up for me before were shifting uncomfortably, glancing at my mother and Mason like they were seeing them for the first time. My mother stood abruptly. I'm done with this. Her voice trembled. This isn't how families handle things. I shook my head. It's how healthy families handle things. With accountability. You've always been dramatic, she snapped. Always playing the victim. Enough, I said, but not loudly. Just with finality. She stopped mid-sentence. I'm not a victim, I said. I'm a father. And I'm done letting my children feel second class in a room where they should have been cherished. I unplugged my laptop, closed it, and looked around the table. For anyone who wants to be part of my kids' lives, you're welcome to. But it will be on equal footing. With respect, with intention, and with boundaries. I paused. For anyone who doesn't, that's fine. We won't lose sleep. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out a small folder, and handed it to my mother. Inside was the certified letter Mason signed. The reimbursement check copy. Every proof of the charges. Everything neatly organized. This, I said, stays between us. I won't file anything. I won't escalate. I won't burn the bridge. But I won't be walking on it unless it's rebuilt. My mother looked down at the folder like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Nobody spoke. Finally, Caleb's small voice broke through the tension. Dad, he whispered. I turned. Can we go home? I smiled gently. Yeah, buddy. We're done here. I took Arya's hand. Caleb grabbed my coat. We walked toward the exit together. Not one person stopped us. Not even my mother. Outside, the cold air hit my face like a reset button. Arya wrapped her arms around my leg. Caleb leaned into me. You okay? I asked. Caleb nodded slowly. You didn't let them make us small. I felt my throat tighten. Never again. What happens now? He asked. I looked down at both of them. These little humans who had watched me fall apart, rebuild, and finally stand tall. Now, I said, now we make our own traditions. The restaurant door shut behind us with a soft click. And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel like I'd walked away from a family. I felt like I'd walked toward one. The one I'd built. The one that mattered. The one I'd protect forever. And that was the moment I understood. Sometimes the only way to save your family is to stop letting the wrong people define it.